Hey everyone, welcome back to Code with Poonam. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas filled with joy, laughter, and lots of coding, guys. Let's make this holiday season even brighter with some amazing coding challenges. This is day 66 of our 100 Days of Coding Challenge in JavaScript, and today we are going to tackle another interesting problem. That is finding the next smaller element for each element in the array, and if no smaller element exists, print -1. Okay, this problem is great for practicing the loops and understanding the concept of comparing the elements. So let's dive into the code and we will start with our challenge. So let's go to our VS Code. In the VS Code, if you see, we have here our question, right? We have to write a JS function to print the next smaller element for each element in the array. And if no smaller element is found, then we will have to print what? -1. And at line number 3, what do we have? We have our input, and for this particular input, this is the output. Okay. Now we will come down at line number 6, and first of all, we are going to break our question. So what is the first important part here? That we have to write what? JavaScript function, correct? So that I will take here and I will put it over here. Okay. Now what is the next important part? That we have to print the next smaller element for each element in our array, correct? So that also I will take here and I will put it over here. After this, what is the next important part? That if no smaller element exists, we have to print -1. Okay. So these are the three important lines of this particular question. Okay. Now, since we have to print or we have to find the next smaller element, so we will come here and we will define our function as what? Next smaller element. Okay. So I will write here like this, and we will remove the space. Okay. And I will replace this smaller s with a capital S. Here also I will remove the space and I will replace this smaller e with a capital E, and I will write here what? Parenthesis. Okay. So this will be our function name. Okay. Now let us come here to the input and output. We will understand how we are reaching to this particular output from this input. Okay. Now if you see, this is our first element. Correct. We have to print what? Next smaller element for the each element, right? So it is going to check from here to here. Where is the immediate next smaller element? It is 7, right? That is why we are getting here 7. Okay. Now it will shift and it will find out for the next element, the next smaller element. So this will be our next element and this will be the range. So from this, it is going to find our next smaller element. So for 7, if you see, 3 would be the smaller, 9 is greater, right? So that is why you can see 3 here. Now, if you come to 9 also now, if you check from here to here, which is smaller, again 3 is smaller, right? So that is why you have 3 here. Now, if you come here, for the next element, that is nothing but what? 3. And what is the immediate next smaller element? It is 2, right? So that is why you have 2. Now, if you come here for this particular thing, now for this 2, what you have here? 1, right? So that is why you are getting 1. Now, when you slide it here for this element, which is the next smaller element, it is not there, right? 15 is greater, so you don't have. That is why you are printing here what? -1. Similarly, for 15, you don't have a next smaller element. That is why you are printing -1. So that is why we are getting in this particular question 2 times -1, because for this input, we have 1 and 15 where we don't have a next smaller element. So that is why this is our output, correct? And that is what we are going to solve it. So we will come down and we will write our approach for this question. Okay. So I will just write here what? Approach. So in this question, we are going to use what? Nested loop. So I will just write here nested loop. Now why nested loop? Because we will be using a nested loop to iterate through the array, and for each element we will be checking the next smaller element by comparing it with subsequent elements. If we find one, we will be printing that out, otherwise we will be printing -1. So here how many loops will be there? There will be only 2 loops. So I will write here what? I loop, and inside our I loop there will be what? J loop. So let us come down and first understand our outer loop, that is our I loop. So I will write here what? I loop. Okay. Now let us write here what? For. Let I is equal to 0, obviously, because it's our array, right? So we have to start from our first element. That is why I is equal to 0. And where it will end, it is going to end at where? ARR dot length minus 1, correct? Because it has to iterate through each element of the array. That is why we will be writing here what? I less than ARR dot length, correct? So it will be always less than 1, correct, of our length. So that is why less than ARR dot length, right? And then we have to increment it. So this will be our I loop because it has to iterate through each element of the array, okay? Now we will come to our J loop. That means our inner loop. So I will write here what? J loop, okay? Now what this J loop is going to do? It is going to find our next smaller element by comparing the current element with the subsequent element. So we will come down and we will write here what? For, and I will write here what? Let J is equal to, and we will write here what? I plus 1. Why I am writing I plus 1? Because when it is at this particular index, we have to check and compare from here to here, right? That means obviously J is our next element of our I. So that is why I plus 1. So immediately it will get the next index. So it will start comparing from this point. And if you see where it is going to end, it will always end at our last element. That means here also we are going to write what? J should be less than our ARR dot length, correct? And then we will write here what? J plus plus, correct? So this will be our J loop, okay? So this will be our I loop and this will be our J loop. So if you see once again, if this is our element, then we have to compare from 9, right, to the last element. That is why we have written what? J is equal to I plus 1. And then it will compare till our last element. That is where 15, okay? And then J plus plus. So it will compare, okay? Let us come here and now we will understand with the help of the iteration, okay? So I will write here what? I is equal to 0. When I is equal to 0, J will be 1, right? So I will write here J is equal to 1. Now we have to start doing our comparison. So 10 we will have to compare with what? We will have to compare with all these elements, right? So I will write here what? 10 comparison will start with all this. And what is our next smallest element after our 10? It is nothing but 7, right? So I will get here what? 7. Now when I is equal to 1, so I will write here what? I is equal to 1. What will be our J value? J value will be 2 because 1 plus 1, right? Now what we are going to compare here? We have to compare 7 with what? We have to compare with our rest of the elements 9, 3, 2, 1 and 15. So I will write here that also. And what will be our smallest element? We will get here what? 3. If you see what is the next immediate element after 7, we have 3. So I will write here what? 3, okay? Now we will write here when I becomes 2. So I will write here what? I is equal to 2. Then J will be what? 3. 2 plus 1, right? That is where it will 3, right? And now what is the next element ready for the comparison? It is our 9. So I will write here what? 9, okay? Now what we are going to get it? We will be getting here what? 3. Why we will get 3? Let's see the comparison which we are going to do. So we have to compare with 3, 2, 1 and 15, correct? So I will write here that also. Now what will be our answer from this? Next immediate element is what? 3. That is where I said we are going to get 3. Now when I is equal to 3 now, okay? So J will be what? 4. 3 plus 1, correct? So it will be definitely be 4, okay? Now what is the comparison going to happen? It will compare with 3, right? So I will write here what? 3. And how the comparison is going to start? It will start from 2, 1 and 15, correct? So I will write here that also. Now what is the next smallest element from here? We will get here what? 2, right? So I will write here 2. If you see the output, we are going correct, right? 7, 3, 3, 2. That is what we have got. Now when I is equal to 4, now, when I is equal to 4, what will be our J value? J value will be 5, right? So, I will write here 5. And what is the value ready for the comparison? 2, right? And what is the range we are going to compare? From 1 and 15, right? So, what is the next immediate element we have here? Smallest one. Nothing but 1. So I will write here what 1. If you check your output, you are getting the exact output, right? Now when I becomes 5, so I will write here what I is equal to 5. That time j will become what 6, and the value ready for the comparison is what 1, right? So we will write here what 15, right? That is what is left out now. We don't have any range, right? Year to year. We just have one value. And if you see, it is not the smallest one, right? So that is where we are going to get here what -1. Now guys, I hope you have understood from I is equal to 0 to I is equal to 5, right? Now let us understand what will happen when I become 6. So I will write here what I is equal to 6, and obviously our j value will be 7, right? And here what is the value we have to compare? We have to compare a 15 value with the rest of the elements, right? To get the next smallest element, right? But for this 15, we don't have an element. So we know the output is going to be -1 only, correct? That is where we are getting in our output also -1. But here one more important thing we have to understand. Here our J loop is not going to work for us. Why? Because if you see the condition, j is less than arr dot length, right? So it will be 7 less than 7. This condition is going to be what? False, right? So here our j loop is not going to run. So our 15 will not travel inside our j loop, okay? So since it is not going to travel, the comparison will also not happen, okay? So directly from the I loop, we will pass it to the condition where it doesn't have any smallest value, and we will print directly -1, okay? So that we are going to see everything down how we are going to do, okay? Now here guys, there is one more important thing to concentrate. When I is equal to 6, we are only left out with one element, that is 15, right? And if we see our j condition is also failing, that is why it is not entering inside our loop, and we are printing directly -1, right? Now it is going to increment I loop, right? So we are going to use I plus plus, and it is going to be what? I is equal to 7. And if you see the condition, I is less than arr dot length, right? So 7 is less than 7. Here will also happen the same, right? And that is where it is going to give us false, and that is where our I loop will also terminate. So we will have only this much iteration from I is equal to 0 to I is equal to 6, and this will be our end of our nested loop, okay? So guys, I have explained you the iteration, okay? And also I have explained you how the comparison is going to perform. Now we will write our conditional statement to find out our next smallest element. So I will write here what? Next smallest element, okay? And below that, we are going to write our conditional statement. So I will write here what? If condition, okay? And in this condition, we will write our statement, okay? Which we are going to compare it. So what we will write? We will write here what? If our ARR of J is less than our ARR of I. And if this conditional statement turns out to be true, then you please break, okay? Why we are writing break? Because we want to stop our further execution. So this is how we are going to get our next smallest element, okay? Now we have got this. Now what we have to do? We have to also write our conditional statement for printing -1, right? So I will write here what? Print -1, okay? And for that, we will use a flag variable. So we will come here and we will write here what? Found is equal to false. So the first we will initialize our flag as false. Okay. Now we will come here and we will take this condition. Okay. So if this condition turns out to be true. Okay. So let me just put this condition here. And if this condition turns out to be true, then we will change our found as true. Okay. So we will come here and write mention as what? Found is equal to true. And if this condition turns out to be false, so let me write this. So if this condition turns out to be false, then there will be no change in our found value, okay? It will remain as false, and using that, we are going to print what? -1, okay? Now, our output, if you see, it is in an array form, right? So that is why we will need an empty array. So we will come down and we will come here and we will declare at what? Result is equal to empty array. And what we will use, we will be using our push method. So let me write this push method. So if this condition turns out to be true, okay, so I'll write here what true, we will push what, our next smallest element. So I will write here push, and we will take this next smallest element and I will put it over here. That is what we are going to do. So if this condition turns out to be true, our found value will also turn to be true, and then we will push our next smallest element to our result array. Okay, now let us come here and we will see what if it turns out to be false. So we will use again push method, because if it is turning out to be false, then also we have to push -1, right? So we will come here and we will write here what false. If this condition turns out to be false, then again we are going to use our push method only. And what we will be pushing, we will be pushing -1, okay? And then we will get our final value. So whatever we have written, once that all execution is completed, we will get our final output. That is nothing but this. So let us take it from here and we will put it down, okay? I will put it over here and we will write here what this will be our final output, okay? So this was our final output, and we will implement the same thing inside our function. So we will write here what function, and our function name will be what, next smaller element, right? And we will invoke it here. So I will write here what, next smaller element, and we will pass our input array. Okay. So let us come here and we will take this input array and we will pass it to this particular function. Okay. Now let us receive here as in parent. So I will write here what, ARR. Okay. And now let us just console it out. So I will write here what, console.log ARR. Okay. Now let us test this in the terminal. So I will write here what, node, and we will write here day 66 challenge, and we will hit enter. What we got our input array. Okay. Now we will come here and we will write our nested loop. So I will write here what, nested loop. Okay. And below this, we will start our I loop. Okay. So I will write here what, let I is equal to 0. I should be less than our ARR dot length. And then we will write here I plus plus. Okay. And inside this, we will write our J loop also. So I will write here what, for let J is equal to, it will be I plus 1, correct? The starting point. And where it will end, J should be less than ARR dot length. So that also I will write here, okay? And then we will write here what, J plus plus, okay? And now we will come here and we will write our console.log statement for our I value, for our J value, and what will be the ARR of J. That means our exact element, okay? So we will write here what, console.log, and we will write here I colon, and we will write here what, dollar of I. So I will get my I value here. And now we will come here and we will write here what, console.log. Here also inside the template literals, I will write here what, I colon dollar of I, and then we will write here what, J colon dollar of J. Okay. And then we will write here what, dollar flower braces, and it will be ARR of J. Okay. Now let us see what do we get in the terminal. Okay. So we will clear the terminal and we will rerun it. So I will write here what, node day 66 challenge, and we will hit enter. Now we will see our output and we will match up what we have done in the iteration. Okay. So we will see one by one. Now when I becomes 0, what is the J value? J becomes 1, and it is going to run till 1 to 6, right? That is what you get here, 7 to 15. Now let us see when I is equal to 1. Okay. When I is equal to 1, it is the same. It is going to run from 2 to 6, and you have here 9 to 15, right? When I becomes 2, it is going to run from 3 to 15. That is what we have, right? When I becomes 3, then it is going to run from 2 to 15, right? So when I is equal to 3, you are getting this value. When I is equal to 4, it is 1 to 15. That means it is correct, right? Now when I is equal to 5, we have only one value, that is our 15, right? So we are checking with this, correct? So we are getting this also. So I said here clearly, when I become 6, our J loop is not going to run. So that is why you are getting here only I colon 6. Okay. Still we have the value 15, and it is going to check with this condition, and it will directly push -1. Okay. So everything we are going to see inside our function. Okay. So let us come here and now let us remove the console.log statement because our terminal is full. So I will clear this out, line number 41 and line number 43 also, and we will see our rest of the things. Okay. Now we will come here and we will write our comparison statement. Okay. So we will write here what if our ARR of J is lesser than our ARR of I. And if this turns out to be true, then we have to push, right? And plus we will have to declare a flag variable and that we will turn as true. So we need to push into our resultant array, right? Into our result empty array, and we will have to turn our flag to true, right? And then what we will have to do, we will have to finally break it up, correct? So that all we are going to do. So for pushing, first we will come here and we will declare here result is equal to our empty array, and inside our I loop, what we are going to do, we will come here and we will declare a flag called as a found, and we will initialize it with false with a boolean value. Okay. Now, when it is true, we are going to push ARR of J inside our result, right? And then we will write here what? Found is equal to true, and then we will write here what? Break. Why break? Because we want to stop our further execution if our smaller a number is being found. Okay. So now we will come here and outside our J loop, we are going to write the condition if there is no smaller element is found, then please push -1. So what we are going to write, if not of found. Okay. This we have seen in the previous challenge also. Why I am writing not of found. Okay. And we will come here and we are going to do what? Result dot push, and we will be pushing -1. Okay. Now, if you come here, I will explain you what is this not of found. Okay. So here found value is what? False, right? So I will write here what? Found is equal to false right now. Okay. That means if I am saying not of found means what? Not of false, because it is a Boolean value. So if it is a Boolean value, so not of false means what? It is true. So that is why not of false means if this is true, then you please push it to result array a -1. That is what we are saying. At the end of the day, we need here found as a false. If this value is true, then you will get here false. Okay. So then you cannot push it. So for that, we will have to come here and we should have a false value only. Okay. Now I will explain you not of found also. Okay. Now what is our found value right now? It is false, correct? Because it is not going to enter inside this loop. So it is going to stay as false, correct? Now what will happen? Found is equal to false. Okay. What is our condition? Not of found. That means not of false. That is nothing but true. Okay. Not of true will give me false. Not of false will give me what? True. So that is what we are writing here. So not of found means not of false. Not of false means true. Then you please push it -1. That is what is the understanding here. Suppose you think what if it is true? Then if you write here not of true, then it will be false. So then definitely it is not going to push. So definitely for running this condition, our found value has to be false. Okay. And now outside our loop, we will come and we will print our result. Okay. So I will write here what? Console.log, and I will print our final result. Okay. So let us come here and we can clear the terminal and we can just test it out. So note day 66 challenge, and we will hit enter. See, we got our exact output 7, 3, 3, 2, 1, -1, -1. See, this is our final output. So we will come here and we will improvise it also. So I will write here what? Next smallest element for each element is. So I will write here next smallest element for each element I will write, and we will write here what? Colon. Okay, and then we will just test it out in the terminal. So let us come here and we will write here what? Node day 66 challenge, and we will hit enter. If you see, I got this correct. Next smallest element for each element is what? 7, 3, 3, 2, 1, -1, -1. Correct? So we have successfully printed this out, and we will come here and we will just comment this out. Okay. Now let us have a quick recap of this question. So we will come at the top, and what it has been written here, we have to write a function to print the next smaller element for each element in that array. And if no smaller element exists, you can print -1, right? And we had our input, and for this input, this was our output, right? Then we understood how we are going to get our output, right? And we came at line number 6, 7, and 8. And what we wrote our JavaScript function as what? Next smaller element, correct? And we also understood what are the important part of this question, right? So print the smaller element for each element in an array. And if there is no smaller element in it, then we are going to print what? -1. We understood this question and we wrote our approach, right? What was our approach? We used a nested loop. Why nested loop? Because we wanted to iterate through the array, and for each element, we will have to check the next smaller element by comparing it with the subsequent element, right? And if we found the next smallest element, we are going to print it. Otherwise, we are going to print -1, right? Then we understood here why we have written I loop, why we have written J loop also, right? And we also understood that we have to compare it with the subsequent element. That is why we have to start our J loop with I is equal to I plus 1, correct? Because we want to compare it from the next element. So that is why J is equal to I plus 1, and J should be less than our ARR dot length. And we know our I loop is simple. It is going to iterate through the array. That is why it is I is equal to 0, and I should be less than ARR dot length. So both the loops are running till our length -1. Okay. Now we came down and we understood the iteration. Okay. So we have understood the iteration from 0 to 5. It was fine. But when I reaches 6, J is 7, right? So when J becomes 7, the condition of our J loop fails and it is not going to enter inside our loop. But I is holding a value of 15. So that is what it will do. It will directly come to this particular condition and we are going to print what? -1. Okay. Then we wrote here how we are going to find our next smallest element, right? So we wrote our if condition. We are going to compare it up, and if it turns out to be true, then we are going to break it then and there. Then only we will find here what? Our smallest element, right? And how we can print -1? We have to create a flag variable, right? That is what we used, a found is equal to false. And if this condition turns out to be true, then we will convert the value from false to true, right? And we will break it also. And if it turns out to be false, then it is not going to go for the comparison, right? So it will come out and then we will get our what? False as false itself found value, and we will print here -1, right? So our final output was as an array form. That is where we came here and we declared a variable called as a result, and we initialized with an empty array. Okay. And then what we did, we used a push method. If it is true, then you push the smallest element. And if it is false, you push the -1. That is what we have done. And we got here our final output, right? And the same thing we did it in our function also, right? At line number 38, we came here and we defined our function next smaller element. Here we were receiving an array, right? At line number 39, what we did, we declared an empty array to store our final output, right? Then we wrote our nested loop, right? And inside that we wrote our comparison statement also, right? And also we used our found variable where this condition was turning true, right? We have come here and we have updated the value to true and we were breaking it up, right? So this was our loop which we have done, correct? Then we came here and we wrote here, if our found value doesn't change, that means you are not getting a smallest value, right? So come here and you push our -1. So here it is pushing our smallest value and here it is pushing -1. Then at line number 58, what we did, we just printed our result with an improvised statement. That is nothing but the next smallest element for each element, right? And at line number 60, we invoked it one time and we passed our input array. You can pass and test it out with the different inputs, okay? So we will come here and we will retest it one more time. So I will write here what node day 66 challenge and we will hit enter. And this is what we are getting. So this was our final output, okay? Now I will tell you guys why this challenge is important, because this problem helps in understanding in how to compare the elements with an array, and it is a crucial skill for solving the algorithm problems. Okay. And guys, that's all for today. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and stay tuned for tomorrow's coding challenge. And keep coding, keep learning, and I will see you all in the next video. Once again, wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye bye.